Fired up there. It's on? Okay. Welcome everybody to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting. And we'll call our meeting to order. It's 7:13. Looking at your agenda, do you have anything which you would like to add or that you have a concern about that you want to make a comment on right now? And Councillor Hassan.
Thank you. I want to add an item regarding the other side of the river.
Okay.
So a cabin or a warm place. The reason why I'm saying that, I called the Great Slave Helicopter to book an appointment, to book a trip from the other side, and they told me that the person has to be like today, to be before between 9 and 10. I called last night. They told me that, if your guy is gonna be there, we don't have any way to bring him across, so he has to go back to Hay River or find himself a place to stay until the morning.
Okay.
So
well, before you go too far into it, okay, is everybody willing to add that item? Perhaps we'll just take out delegations because there isn't going to be any tonight. We'll just call 6 new business and have A as shelter across the Liard ferry crossing. And with that change, are there any others? Anybody want to add or delete? All right, then show of hands, all those in favor of the amended agenda. Okay, so we'll adopt our agenda. And are there any declarations of interest in any of the items this evening? All right, none noted. Councillor absences, there's none. We're all here. And so we're going right into the item Councillor Hassan brought up, which was the shelter across the Liard. Go ahead, Councillor Hassan.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't like the word shelter, but I think we have families that are coming from down south right now. We have people who might have some medical problems who will be coming to the town. If you miss the helicopter or if there is any bad weather and that person is on the other side, and if that person doesn't have enough fuel to stay in the vehicle for the night, or kids or anything, then we might face a problem, or people might face a problem of where they're going to stay, especially if they don't have to go back even to checkpoint. So that came up with the discussion, with the issue which I just mentioned earlier. And I think if we could have a cabin there or build something with like little wood stove, and people at least could shelter themselves during these kind of emergencies. And that's just an idea. I don't know. This is the time when we can discuss this issue. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Gill, go ahead.
I'm wondering if Moz has discussed this with transportation.
Yeah. Okay, and Councillor Christensen?
I know that Lands was working on getting a little park on the other side, just for this issue. So I would communicate with Lance and see if a cabin can be involved with that planning of that park.
Right. Yeah.
I do have some issues about vandalism though, and a wood stove going in that cabin and stuff like that. But I mean, yes, we should be offering some kind of shelter for those incidents.
Okay, Councillor Tetzel?
When I worked with transportation with Kevion, I discussed with them opening up the old park that's over there just for that purpose. And this was quite a number of years ago now, but nothing's happened.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to go, so this was about a year ago, just before I left Lands. I know this was being brought up and transportation was heading it.
Okay, SAO, go
I
ahead.
believe this campground, I know I spoke to ITI about it a little while ago, and I believe Pat Council actually offered support for the planned campground. So my understanding is it's happening very soon.
Yeah, so it should be happening. I mean, winter is when is the best time for land clearing, so I could see this happening. And it's just kind of maybe seeing if we can get a cabin put onto that plan for that campground.
Is it in the same position, same place as the?
From my understanding, yes.
So it wouldn't take much.
I was wondering too, if maybe they could even have a fuel cache, perhaps locked up, but something that if you phone somebody on an emergency number, they could give you a code to a door and get a couple of 5-gallon jerry cans out. Because if you're there and you're 20 below and you got no fuel, I mean, maybe you just want to turn around and get back to another community if you can. That way it's not open doors for anybody to take, but and also because, cell phone does not work all the time right there, some kind of cell phone booster at that location. I mean, you often do have a cell phone involved now, but if nobody can get to you, you have to have some way of getting resources, if it's fuel or a warmer building. I think that's something at least. It particularly seems to be needed for a sudden shutdown. Like after a couple of days, everyone should be aware by signage before they hit the highway that, the ferry's closed. But for the first little while, we found people trapped this year. It's happened in other years. And sometimes it even happens because in the middle of the season, something happens and people just can't, get across. In the summer, it's not as bad. You can usually get choppers later.
So,
Maybe we should ask highways what their plan is.
yeah, I'm just wondering has there been data kept over the years of how many people have been stranded there during the 6 weeks of freeze up and?
They don't care, put it bluntly. So I think we have to bring that up. No, they just walk away. They don't even send a chopper over to see if somebody needs medicine or anything like that. I mean, it's pretty abrupt. And the excuse is, well, you live in the north. We told you we could close anytime, and you should have been prepared. But yeah, that's kind of a pretty harsh way of dealing with it, I guess. When there could be a simple. Go ahead, Councilman.
Well, the appropriate department and see where we stand and what their plans are, and just let them know that there is a situation and take it from there.
Yeah. Okay. So would we agree then that perhaps a letter should be drafted to the Department of Highways, just indicating concern over people being stranded? And what's the department's response?
Yeah.
Will they have any way of dealing with that? Yeah.
Lands, maybe?
Well,
I think it was
the only
more-
reason I
sorry.
hesitate with lands is it's not their problem, right? Although they have been working on that. I think it's the primary responsibility. We could see the letter to lands just because we know that there's certain things happening, but we should get the answer from the highways minister, I think.
Yeah, and I believe it was ITI kind of taking up that project too. So I think ITI was mainly involved because they want to make that into a park, a campground again kind of thing. It was basically because of ferry, when people ferry that way, they have a place to camp. But I don't see why we can throw up a cabin in there as well.
All right.
And I believe that side of the river is still that municipality right in
The
that
other
little
side of the
side.
river,
Sure, I thought it was.
I think it's reserved transportation,
Oh, okay.
highways. I think there's a reserve there.
All right. So when this letter is drafted, do people want to see it before it goes out?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we'll send a draft to counselors, and if it's suitable, we'll forward it on, and then we'll get a response. We'll wait for a response. Okay. That's what we'll do for that one. Does that satisfy your concerns, Councillor Hassan?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
okay. So moving along to reports and discussion matters. Darrell White is here as our finance person to answer any questions as we go over, firstly, the 2022 budget estimates for general operation and maintenance. And does anybody have any concerns up front? Does anyone? We'll get Darrell, maybe just go over it, but yes. Deputy Mayor Gill?
Do we have an organizational chart?
Yes.
Okay. I just wondered how many employees we have any chance per department.
Get that way.
Yeah.
Okay, and Darrell, did you want to just give us Cole's notes?
Yeah.
Through that O&M?
Thank you, Mayor Wiley. Again, very nice to welcome new councilors that are here. My first time to sit with you, and welcome. What I'll do is I'll run through the operating budgets and then the capital budget, and as we get through it, when that sort of presentation is done, if you have any questions or information that you're looking for, then certainly ask away, and if we don't know it, we'll get it for you. So if we look at the operating budget estimates, we'll start at page 1. It runs right through, I believe, if you go through, let me start with capital plan at around page 17. The operating estimates are, prior council members would have been presented with those estimates, and we did a second draft between our last budget meeting and tonight. Basically, the only change, I believe, was to add a full-time position for bylaw. So that is one thing that we did add. Okay, so I'll just run through some of the highlights. Our budget, total budget this year is, it has increased by about 159,000 over last year. So it's at about 6,179,000 versus 6,020,000 last year. So that's an increase of about 2.64% over last year. The bulk of that increase is happens through the increase across the board with the collective agreement for our unionized employees. They're all receiving a 2% salary increase along with some benefits. And the other big item that's new is the position of a fire chief, paid fire chief. So that's adding about $95,000 into the total budget. So those are the two things that are basically driving it up. In our estimates, the mill rates are remaining the same as they were in 2021. Our grants from territorial government for both operating and water sewer are estimated to remain the same as what they were last year. We have noticed some small increases year to year from the territorial government with those grants, but we'll budget conservatively and keep them. There's no reason to think there'll be decreases. So other new costs that we have in this year are when we go to the new office complex, there is an ongoing yearly base lease or a capital lease component and an operating lease component. Together, they total $178,000. And that will be a commitment the village will have for the next 20 years. So that will be ongoing. The offset to that a little bit is how we deal with this building in terms of cutting its operational costs, as well as the increases we'll see in some property tax revenue with the new buildings going up. So they should give us a little bit of extra money. I guess, and also water and sewer rates have remained unchanged relative to last year. So all the water rates and garbage and tip fees and things like that will remain the same. And so that's the basic Coles notes of the operating budget. And
I have one question about the water and the sewer, or are you gonna go more into that after? I just wondered about, I know there was a previous plan by council to give a rebate
yes,
for people on trucked water who were having to pay for pump outs.
yes. That was both in last year's budget, and we'll be following up on that as we get at the end of this year. So those folks who qualify will be able to submit for their, I'll call it the 21 rebate.
Right.
And as well, we budgeted that same amount in 2022 for those rebates. So for those who qualify, there will be a rebate up to $500 each year, provided that receipts are provided for your pump out services during the year, and we'll be rebating those early in the new year. So we'll always roughly be a year behind in the rebating. So yes, that is, that will be.
So a printout from the company would be
That would, yeah,
adequate?
just something that can show us that they paid at least $500.
Mhm.
And, where it's less than five, then we rebate up to that amount, so.
Just to add on that, sorry, is that gonna cover people calling for emergency pump outs and stuff like that? Because, I mean, that's an additional, I think, $125 or something like that for those kind of things. When they should be on a planned schedule or something like that, they shouldn't be having to call to get a pump out at 8 o'clock at night.
We've only sort of fleshed it through to the point of provide us costs up to 500 and
Okay.
we'll give you that back. How that 500 is made up, if it's emergency or just normal pump outs.
It doesn't really matter.
We don't care one way or the
And
other.
if they don't exceed 500, we're not giving them a full 500.
No.
then.
No.
Okay.
And I think there's a wide range. Some people only get pump out maybe once a year if they have a septic field, but there are people that are getting pumped out twice a month.
Okay,
And
because,
so it's people that are spending, I would say, thousands
Yeah.
a year versus some that are in the, maybe $100. So it's not a complete rebate for everybody. It's just a way to kind of try to level it out a little bit between the people on the island who are on this, the system, right? The water and sewer system, but yeah, go ahead.
The rebate was for, if I remember correctly, for water callouts as well. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if the water callouts or just, I think when we originally set it up, just those
Just
who
for
are getting
sewer?
sewers.
Just
pumped
for
out.
sewers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that had been talked about too, like the weekend call-outs for water.
But that wouldn't qualify under what council?
Not right now, I don't think, eh? The
No.
way we,
It's certainly something council could look at and expand the program if they so wish. But right now, it just was the sewer.
and the estimated cost for that was up to 50?
50,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we have budgeted. So
based on 100
Yeah, well, yeah,
people times 500, potentially.
potentially. And we'll get a better barometer there once we get a year under our belt and we see how many have actually applied, how much their the totals are going to be. Okay. So I'm going to leave the operating budget at this point and go into our capital plan. Capital plans are very dynamic and changing, and we try and sort of give an estimate of what we think we want to do and staff want to try and accomplish with council in terms of year to year to year. We do a 5-year plan each year, and we keep updating it. If you look at our summary of the 5 years, you'll notice that the 5-year plan is pretty much front-end loaded in year 1 and 2, and years 3, 4, and 5 do not have a lot in them. However, as we move through the years, projects will be identified both by council and staff, and they'll come forward. And so as we move through to 2024, 25, 26, you'll see that the money will get spent. But we'll focus primarily tonight on years 1 and year 2.
Maybe just for the new counselors, can you, like the acronyms of CPI,
Yes.
ICIP,
I was gonna,
GIF?
that's a lot.
We'll do. Okay. If we just go to page 18, it'll sort of take us to our capital estimates for 2022. So in the column just right of the descriptions, you'll see CPI and different things. CPI is what we call our community public infrastructure, and we receive funding each year from the territorial government for strictly capital projects. And the annual amount of that is $1,332,000. So that comes every year, and that is utilized for capital projects. We're not permitted to bring any of that money into operations. It's strictly for capital. If you look to another little acronym there, GTF, that's the gas tax fund. It now has a new name, but we've always known it as the gas tax fund. That's another fund through the federal government that we receive each year. It has a broad range of projects that you can spend on. It's a little more tight. It's a little tighter than what you can do with CPI, but pretty broad as far as what you can spend. And we get an annual amount of $613,000 for that. The next one is what we call ICIP, Investing in Canada's Infrastructure Program. These are federal programs that we apply for when there are announcements that come from the territorial government. And so in the last 2 years, we've applied and received funding approvals on a chip seal project from last year we did. This year we received funding towards the Splash Park project. The installation of the pool, which is going to happen next year. And as well, later this year, we received approval on a project we have at the landfill. So these are all funded. These projects are funded 75% by the ICIP project program. So the other 25% comes out of our CPI money.
You know, that ICIP is called Investing in Canada
Infrastructure
Infrastructure
Program.
Program.
Yes.
And that other one was called, even though, like Daryl said, it's the old gas tax, and now they have a new name called Canada Community Building Fund, that's CCBF.
CCBF, yeah. Our next
Small
Funding.
Communities Fund.
Pardon?
Small Communities Fund.
Okay. We also are part of what they call Small Communities Fund, which you'll see hyphenated as SCF. Back in 2016, the village was approved for funding to an amount of $1,709,000 back in 2016. Between then and now, we've spent all but $343,000 of that approved funding. So over the last 3-4 years, there's been a lot of improvements within the rec center, as well as the fitness center. So these were the types of projects that this funding addressed. So that 343, we need to spend that by the end of 2023. So we have another couple years to do some things. We do recognize that some work does need to be done to the roof. And so we're going to be exploring that further in 2022. The other project that we talked about is painting the exterior of the community center and the rink and all of that, because that I don't think has been done since the building has been put up. So
Dale, are these proposal driven or are they?
the projects themselves,
Yeah.
they'll be we'll put out a request for proposal, a request for quote, or something to that effect as we get into spring and summer and get that work done. So there'll be a public procurement process that we'll be following for that. And what else? Yeah, we also have a pot of money sitting in reserve.
Were you kind of meaning, do we have to put a proposal in to get the funding? Is that more what you meant, or?
No, I realize that.
Yeah.
Contract.
You're
some
more
of this
about
work,
procurement?
right?
Of the work. Yeah. These funds are approved. We just need to do some work, show the cost, and get reimbursed ourselves. And this is also a 75% program that is funded.
And are these funds allocated to each municipality or are they proposal driven? That's the other question.
Well, with this Small Communities Fund, the village would have put forth a proposal back in 15-16 that identified need.
Mhm.
And so there would have been a federal announcement at the time of the Small Communities Fund program. And so that would have gone in and got assessed and then approved. So we're in that one now. Same with the ISIP. There were announcements back in 2019 and 20 about this program coming down the pipe. And once all the T's and I's were crossed and dotted, we put our applications in and were notified, in each case, these different projects.
It's a multi-year.
Yeah, the ISIP one is as well. It's, we have a number of years to complete that work, so.
And I think we can apply for more funding for other projects that are ready to go.
Yeah.
If we,
So as you
in future years, decide.
as you get, ideas and projects that you folks want to see, then we'll investigate those for funding as well, so. Finally, again, we have been able to bank some money over the years in a water sewer reserve of about $1.5 million. So that is sitting, it's not sitting idly, it's earning the best interest we can on it from banks, but as you all know, they don't pay very much. But that money is there for projects that we want to do capital-wise, water and sewer. It's pretty much council's discretion where, but I suspect MACTA would want to see those funds spent on water and sewer because it was their funding that allowed those surpluses to build over those number of years. So that's sort of a snapshot of the different funds we receive each year and how we're best utilizing them. And so what I would like to do on page 18 is just run through the projects that we've identified for next year. And that'll give you a pretty good snapshot of how the years flow out as we go forward. So the first item would be, we have an existing long-term debt with the Bank of Commerce, which we pay principal payments each year of $250,000. And that was a project done a few years ago to bring the wastewater treatment plant up to standards and what have you back then. That loan will be paid out in 2025. So we've got the next 3 years and then a little bit of that 4th year. We also have a annual lease on breathing apparatus purchased for the fire department. So that is an ongoing $15,000 expenditure that flows through capital. So those are the 2 leases and long-term debt obligations. Projects. In 2022, we do plan to complete the final phases of chip sealing in the community. And we've estimated $250 for that. That could move a little bit, but we'll see how much we want to do and how that can be achieved. Any comments you wanted to make on the paper?
Yeah, we've done a couple of years of chip sealing now, but my sense is that this will be the last year for quite a while. So that's something I'd like council to consider is, of the areas that maybe haven't been chip sealed, what would your priorities be? A couple of suggestions that I've come up with is the road around the Papal site. It's quite large. The estimate for that came at 160, I think.
160, 180 in that range.
Yeah. And there's a few smaller cul-de-sacs and lanes. We could probably get most of that done, including the Papal site, for the 250 we have budgeted. So really what I'd like council to do is kind of consider what's a priority. Is it important enough to spend that money on chip sealing the Papal site, the road around the Papal site, or would you rather see that money spent elsewhere?
So which roads haven't been chip sealed yet?
That's what I'm here to go to.
I don't know if you guys, I don't know if anyone can see this map up here. So there's the road around the Papal site, which will roughly 160, 165. And then there's this small road behind the new Service Canada building.
How many lots are serviced by that one?
I
Isn't
thought
it?
that was
I thought
a
that's like an alley almost.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Okay, yeah.
There's a sense that with this road being switched to one way, and with the addition of the new Service Canada building, that might see more traffic. There's also this cul-de-sac here. There's also the lane. Again, I don't know if you call it a road or a lane behind the Henday building. That's come up quite a few times. Quite a few people have asked to chip seal that. There's some work to do for drainage on that road. But again, it's really what's a priority from council. And another suggestion was the lane behind the new office complex or a road. So that L-shaped road right behind the new office complex.
And a little bit down towards the boat launch too. I mean,
Yeah, and then so that's another option is down this road. It's quite a long stretch, so I think just this, or
Study.
had you thought?
yeah, it's been talked about, like the business down there was asking about,
Oh, just the float
because it's
plane?
a tourism thing and there's
Yeah.
quite a few tourists that would go there, that could it be chipped to at least the front of their business.
Yeah, that floodplain basin.
They get a lot of, and partly because there's a lot of traffic in front of their business, it just creates a lot of dust and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of traffic to the boat launch.
That's right, yeah.
so now if we went all the way to the boat launch, well, if that's roughly 160.
Mhm.
And just by looking at it, you can, that's gonna be quite pricey.
Straight line.
But still, there's a lot, and, if it was a single layer chip seal, it wouldn't be so bad. But it's the base work on the road needs to be done, which is probably more expensive than the chip seal itself.
What
So-
about on the hill?
And then up on the hill, I think there's a couple of little spots. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a few small spots. I think for the most part, it's mostly done.
And we might have a few repairs, right?
Yeah, a few repairs, yeah.
Some soft areas out there.
Mostly sand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Looking about.
So will, our council kind of generally comfortable with keeping that 250 in the budget for that?
I mean, I have a
250.
little bit of concerns. I find, like, I know behind my house, as soon as that got chip sealed, it got fixed this year, everyone started doing about 80 down that road. And that's going to the boat launch. So that's gonna just increase that speed going to the boat launch because they're always flying down that road.
Mm.
And I'm worried about that around the Papal grounds too, because that's where a lot of people like to walk. And people are gonna just start driving faster and faster.
Maybe we put speed bumps in.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Can we start maybe installing some speed bumps?
Well, that makes it difficult for clearing snow in winter.
Well, isn't that why we got experienced good operators,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know how cities deal with that.
But that's one of my concerns is as soon as that chip seal got fixed, everyone started driving way faster. I kind of actually wish behind my house they would have left the potholes.
Hmm.
And what's the speed limit on that street?
Oh, it's 40.
No, we are going with the full-time bylaw officer.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, if we're moving forward with that, then I definitely want to see some more speed traps set up or something like that. But yeah, I agree. We need to, I don't see why we wouldn't spend that money, but I do have concerns with, those are the two highest traffic for foot traffic areas.
Hmm.
And as soon as that chip seal's done, people start driving faster.
It's like down my street. With the new building at the end of the street, there's increased traffic on my street. And, they don't slow down.
I remember that the highways department said that they would connect right around the loop. They've got Denoa Drive and the 4 Mile access. 2 ways that you can get down to 4 Mile. Those aren't connected right now, are they? I know they came a little. They're down around. I'm almost sure that it's not chip sealed the whole way, and we didn't finish.
One.
Yeah,
Did like that straightaway as you go in, but the part that goes around, I don't think they
I
did.
know there was definitely one section that was missed this year that we didn't get to because there was some base work that needed to be done or some repairs, so, but I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure.
thinking it's the 4 Mile access,
Yeah.
not the first turn you go in, the next
Second
one. That's
turn.
our responsibility, right? By Denise Martineau's house and that. I don't think that's chip sealed.
I don't think so either.
And that would connect that loop around, and then if highways hasn't finished that little section past Danny Peterson's, or it was around there somewhere, maybe even before that, we could get that whole circle at least done. So it's another one.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I in my opinion, the Papal grounds should be the priority over the boat launch stretch.
Mhm.
Just because it's got the most foot traffic, it's our kind of most scenic area.
Yeah.
Great.
But yeah, $250,000. Let's keep it in there. Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna say.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, like we, we do have, we've got some, so far, we got some money to spare. We could add to it.
If, in the end, it becomes an estimate and just.
Yeah,
We do have $500,000 reserved.
So when we, sorry,
And about this, because, there's some locations there that seem to be pretty, priority and stuff. Why don't we get a list of the areas that have not been, if you can find that information?
Yeah.
And maybe at the next council capital meeting, project priority setting, you can look at that again.
Yeah.
Because right now, we're all, okay, well, this is good.
And even
I
if
like
you-
the people go on idea too. But
Yeah, I think
I've got a vested interest in that.
I agree. I think a list of what
Yeah.
still needs to be done would be
Yeah,
very
and that
helpful.
way we can, like if it's residential or, people need wheelchair access or, because I think of David Daniela right away when it comes to roads and wheelchairs and that sort of stuff. I think it'd be being pushed up.
Yeah,
that
even
4
if you
mile
could
hill,
get
right? Like
looked at
that.
by the engineer too, so that if there's base work estimates that, are involved, so it's, we know it's so much a kilometer for chip seal in general, but some of these roads might need to take more.
Would that go to the committee? Are you,
It might,
These normally, I mean, we come back another time for another committee meeting on budget. And then hopefully by the second meeting in December, you would be comfortable with everything that's in there to do the resolution that would help them for
and so
2022.
your fiscal year runs January
Calendar.
1st to the
Yeah.
calendar, so you're hoping to
Yeah.
get an approved budget by the end.
Territorial government doesn't though, they run April to March.
Yeah.
So kind of
Well,
keep it on. Okay, continuing on, we've allotted 80,000 for sidewalks this coming year. There are areas that that are in need, but certainly if there's areas in town that you folks see as priority, let us know, and when we do the call for work, that we'll be addressing what you guys see as a need, and we'll go forward there.
one of the things about the sidewalks I've heard is that with the new building going up and the manor that was always there's gonna be a fair bit of traffic coming up and down that road. There actually is no sidewalk on either side. So if there could be, that might be one of the areas to look at.
so another thing that I'd like council to consider is like, moving forward into next year and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years down the line. What would you like to see as far as sidewalk work done? Is it something like, do you envision the whole island having sidewalks on every road in the future? Wild rose, up, areas up on the hill. Is that something that I'd like to start doing a little bit more planning for the future. So, if there's large scale sidewalk plans that you'd like to see happen at some stage, we can get those plans in place now. And then when these infrastructure programs, the funding programs come up, we have a project ready to apply for funding. And also, if we have a long-term plan with certain priorities, we can do a little bit every year and keep working towards that plan. But I'd like to come back to the sidewalk conversation, but just for the time being, just give some thought to what you'd like to see in the future.
as we get more and more roads chip sealed and sidewalks, I see you've got industrial street.
Street sweeper, yeah.
How much are those? And I think That would be a big improvement.
I think we have
That's
it
off
in,
the table now.
that's in this.
That's
uh,
passed.
Like it's,
Yeah, so, oh yeah, okay, we were looking at different options about whether to get a sweeper attachment for a loader.
okay.
We're sort of in the process of having those discussions right now with staff, so. You know, one thing that we want to make a priority is keeping roads swept. Now that we've got nice new roads, it would be a shame to have them covered in dust all summer.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Bill. The other thing we're doing is over each of the years, we're starting to replace our fleet of vehicles. Most of our vehicles are over 10 years old. And so we did, in this 2021 year, we did purchase 2 vehicles. One that will be utilized by the fire chief and another one in the rec administration operations. And so we'll be, we have planned for next year and the year after replacing another vehicle in each of the years.
Just a quick question on that. So when you say replacing, are you getting rid of the old ones?
That's the ideal. What we want to do is sort of auction those old ones off. But we haven't really been very successful at doing that over the last number of years with some of our equipment.
I just asked because I see a lot of village employees using their personal vehicles.
Mhm.
And I don't agree with that. They should have work vehicles. They
Yeah.
shouldn't have to use their personal vehicles. So I don't see why are we getting rid of older vehicles when not everyone,
Not everyone.
there's
has
not
one.
enough vehicles to accommodate the personnel we have.
Okay, well, that's certainly a good idea, and we'll certainly take that forward.
'Cause especially when they're using it for work, I guarantee they don't have the proper insurance
Mhm.
for their personal vehicle being used for work. So if an accident happens, that's a huge issue.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Sorry, that was something that I actually wrote down when I was looking at the budget.
No, no problem.
You know, just going from A to B for work is one thing, but pulling trailers and actually doing work in your personal vehicle is another thing. There are some staff who would just rather use their own vehicle, so it's not always a case of not having enough or not willing to provide a vehicle. But you're right that when our staff is doing village work with a personal vehicle, it should be a work vehicle.
That should be a policy
Yeah.
item.
Okay, next item down that list is the landfill, 856,000. So our ISIP funding approval was for a project of $1 million at the landfill. We have done a bit this year in terms of acquiring some new equipment at the landfill, and so that's going to help us achieve what we want to do out there over the long haul. So the main or the biggest component of the landfill improvements will be the construction of a compost pad, which will not only treat normal, disposable compost waste, but also will allow us to meet a requirement from the water board with respect to treating our biosolid sludge. So when we're up and operational, the sludge that comes from the wastewater treatment plant will go on to the compost pad with other materials and break it down, and ultimately it won't become compost that will be for residential or consumer use. It will be mostly used as cover for our landfill. So that's the plan for that compost. There's different standards of how, what levels of compost. It's a science and technology of it, but you need a real high standard for it to be sold to you and I to put on our gardens, but much lower standard to go to cover on the landfill. So that's what its main purpose will be.
So do you plan on investing in compost bins for every household?
Down the road, yeah. We want to get our feet wet in terms of doing, that biosolid, and then. But the other important thing we want to do is set the landfill up similar to a transfer station concept, so that when you come to the landfill, you can dump your materials in one of a number of bins right at as you go in. Right now, where you see the trailers at now and the attendant is. So we think in terms of safety and going forward that the only folks that need to go to the tip face are the contractors who are collecting, and maybe some other large industrial users. But by and large, folks coming to the landfill can dump in the bins up front, and then the attendants, as the bins fill up, can take the debris down to whether it's domestic or the construction or what have you. So that's the long-term goal for the landfill, and these project approvals hopefully are going to help us achieve that. So it'll be ongoing. Recreation projects. I spoke earlier on the Small Communities Fund. So we're hoping to be able to complete, utilize all of our small community funding next year, and get the roof and other painting done there. So ski hill lookout. We have, that was the other thing we were approved for ISIP, was the ski hill project concept that we had submitted. And the first phase of that was the floating bridge across the Snai. So we've done that, done a lot of grubbing work up on top of the hill. So the next part of that project is a lookout. And so Kevin had been doing a lot of work with that. And so a lot of that planning work has been done in terms of location and what it'll look like. And so hopefully we're going to pull the trigger on that next year with the funding we still have. And Kevin's even looking for more money to do more things up on the ski hill. So might even have a T-bar and stuff up there. So, but we'll see. So that's the $187,000, which will utilize that. Playgrounds, we throw an amount in for playgrounds, tennis courts, basketball. It's maybe something that we can incorporate. I know this year with playground, we had a playground number in with our splash park, so we incorporated the two of those together. So again, something is a bit of discretion there for next year if we decide not to. The installation of the pool, that is a project that will cost $385,000, and the ISIP program is covering 3/4 of that. So, and again, basketball court. If there's money, if there's a better direction where those funds can be spent, that's certainly at council's discretion. So nothing's carved in stone there. Under VIC and administration, community plan. We had contracted close to 2 years ago now with consultants out of Ontario to complete our community plan and zone bylaw. And due to COVID and what it did to travel and restrictions, it basically has sat in limbo for 20 and now 21. But we're hoping that by next spring that those folks will be free to travel, come into the community, and undertake that engagement with the community and come up with some ideas as far as zoning going forward for the community, as far as update and develop a new community plan for Fort Simpson. Yeah.
So a survey went out last year, I believe.
Yes.
Have we compiled all the results from that, and are we submitting it to these consultants for the community plan?
They've gone to the consultant.
Okay.
So that's all information they'll have.
So I noticed in the community, there's, I wouldn't say industrial areas, but within residential areas, will those be addressed?
That's part of what that process will identify. And with your guys' engagement as council, if you don't like that and want that changed, then that's certainly, bring that forward. The public, there'll be public meetings to talk about those kinds of things. So, yeah. So that'll be all part of that engagement process. Okay. Next year, at the fire training ground, the fire department has requested funding to do an enhanced burn structure. I'm not sure exactly what that all entails, but it's basically setting things on fire within a confined space that they can train on. And so that would be located at the training ground and be part of their training equipment, things of that nature. So
I noticed there's, within the community, I know, there's a lot of houses that are abandoned. Has there been discussions with the landlords or ban or whoever owns those houses? Because that could be a training project.
we haven't, no.
Do you mean derelict houses? Yeah. Well, we got a tax sale tomorrow morning with 4 properties up for sale.
Where are those? Because I couldn't,
Um,
can you just quickly point it out to us?
It's the old gas station, right
The
there,
one right in the
those two
middle of
lots
town?
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right across the road there.
Yeah. Okay.
these 3. And then I think it's this one.
Yeah, it's across from
Yeah, it's
Brendan
at,
Petzo's there.
Okay.
that old brown trailer.
I think
Double
it
wide
used to be a
trailer?
little childcare center or
Yeah, it used to
something
be
like that.
daycare.
Daycare.
Yeah.
And
Jennifer.
then I can't remember where this
On
one.
Antoine Drive there, yeah.
It's the red one, I guess. I'm not sure.
It's Oakland, the red one beside, on Antoine Drive,
Mhm.
before you reach, Becher Suites.
Oh.
There's a red building there.
It's in pretty bad shape too.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. And those were privately owned,
Yes.
Yeah,
so they're fee simple?
Yep.
Hmm.
No, I definitely looked.
you?
I just don't have the capital to invest to upgrade them and fix them up.
But that's a pretty small lot though, isn't it?
I was more looking at the one across from Brendan's house there,
Oh, right.
because it's a nice location. I like that location.
It was, I guess, apparently it was used, I guess some people were using it
Oh, really?
just to survive.
Uh,
So, I mean, I had to get in, I had to board it up this year.
But yeah, the way the auction works though is that you have to come with a certified check or a draft for 25% of the minimum price.
25%.
Yeah. So if the minimum price is, $60,000, you got to come with a check for $15,000, and that has to be certified. So you can't take your money back after you gave it to us. And if you are the winner, you have to at least be bidding the minimum price. If you're deemed to be the winner, there's a 30-day waiting period, and if the owner comes by and pays his tax, the sale's called off, you get back your check. But if he doesn't, 30 days later, our lawyer says, where's the rest of the money? And you have to have it. If you don't have it, without delay, you lose your 25%. So there's a risk to doing this. You shouldn't just be bidding unless you know you can come up with the rest of the money. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, no, it was more just,
Yeah.
I was looking at them and I was licking my chops, but no, I got too much to fix up my
Yeah.
life.
And those prices are firm, they're not negotiable?
Yeah, the minimum price, no, that's actually something that comes from the Property Tax Act. And it's sort of to protect the property owner so that property isn't sold for next to nothing, just to cover a small tax bill. It's the tax bill gets covered first, whatever's left would go to the owner. And even though it's getting sold at 50% of the assessed, it would still be, something. And you can't take away his property or the property owner's rights to that degree, to unfairly sell it for too low of a price. That's what it's all about. Yeah, Councillor Hassan?
Thank you. I just have a question. I think according to the act, the employees of the village are not allowed to bid on them. And as councillors, we are more involved in the auction more than the employees. I think we are not also allowed to bid.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm filling out an employee information form right here, so I think that.
I know,
Be wary of conflict.
there is a contact number for the lawyer on the auction ad, but I'm not 100% certain, but I'm fairly confident that councillors are allowed to bid if they want.
Yeah, the reason being that it's a totally public process and there's no insider information. Everything is advertised, the prices are set, and it's open auction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the capital?
Yeah.
Off track here.
Okay. So we have two smaller items down in water and wastewater, just some ongoing capital needs for filters and curb stops that we do year to year. Those are mostly ongoing. I know that 70,000's been there for 3 or 4 years and it just sort of stays there. So doesn't usually normally get done. So, and the curb stops are just ongoing improvements to the valves, the different properties, where there are issues. So that's the biggest of the. Oh,
I just want to touch on the water study real quick, if you don't mind.
oh yes, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
This is something that the previous council had committed to. Was a study. We had the plan was to have a consultant do a study identifying options for water up on the hill. I think, not sure exactly, but it was things like piping water mains all the way up the hill, some kind of water tank storage, and different kinds of options like that.
Seasonal water delivery by pipe and then flushing it before the winter season. Just different ways of, looking at how we can get water, and some of it to do with fire safety too. Having the ability to fill up water quickly, big holding tanks up there in case, during fire season it's needed.
So is there a report somewhere?
So this study was never commissioned. It was a budget item that was in the capital plan, but never actually went anywhere. So what I'd like council to do is to put some thought into, is this something that you want to see move forward? And if so, what would that scope of work look like? What should that study entail? And if there's have some discussion around that at some stage and bring that to a consultant and commission that study.
It's a useful tie-in with the community plan too, because as we identify areas where you might want to develop off island, you need to know what the costs of delivering water and sewer are going to be, and whether you can have piped water would be one of the considerations. it sort of brings up that point of the fire training area. I know that's an area where we're using it as an overflow tent city, an emergency area. I don't mind it being used as the fire training area, but whether that area would permanently be that or potentially something else. I think that's something in the community plan that needs to be looked at because it is high and dry and close to the community. Certainly a developable area that has to be considered if there's options for other places to put the fire department. I mean, that's just a consideration, right?
Yeah, I think there was a plan a few years back, do you remember, for development, residential development.
In that area,
Yeah,
I think they had thought about subdividing the 10 acres up into
Yeah,
1 acre pieces and making more light industrial up there. And,
it was quite a few years back. Yeah.
and you know, maybe the fire department would still have an area, but that's a fairly large area.
Mm.
If you need training, how much training area do you need? Those are things that,
Exactly. My question is a training area a necessity?
I think it is. I think the
think
training
so.
area is,
I think
but
so.
where exactly it has to be or could be, that's maybe something. You don't want it too far from town because they do take fire trucks out of town, and if they're too far, they can't come back quick. So there's a reason why it's there, but there might be other options possibly. Just saying that that's a consideration you should keep in your mind when you come to the community planning and thinking about water enhancements off the island, things like that.
So that's the bulk of 2022. The other 4 years, there's not a whole lot in them at this point. I am confident that going forward, you guys will come up with great plans and we'll fill that capital plan up in the years going forward. So I guess that is the presentation, and certainly any questions, fire away.
Yeah.
Notice, Kevin, you mentioned there were light poles that were going to be installed this year,
For streetlights,
or streetlights.
that's, we
Is it
haven't got,
in-
we haven't got it
reflected
in the plan yet. We just applied for funding.
Oh, I see.
So I think we'll wait and see when that funding proposal comes back, and then we'll add that in.
Add
there.
that in. It'll be like an in
If
and
that's
out,
approved.
because it'll be a cost and we'll get funding through the capital round for that. So no cost to the village.
Is that through the transportation department?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have about 50,000 every year.
I think that's all we got last.
Or 25.
No, I think it's in the region of 50, 60, 70.
Right. One of the things that I've always wondered about in Fort Simpson, and I've asked the Department of Transportation on more than one occasion, is why does the village of Fort Simpson pay for street lighting on the territorial highway, which is basically starting from right here on the corner of the Visitor Information Center, going all the way to the airport. There are streetlights.
Mhm.
Now, GNWT doesn't have like a needs-based system for determining when their own highways need the lights. We asked for the lights because we knew that it was a danger to the citizens to be walking on their highways. They never pushed on that themselves, and so they basically created a situation where we're paying for the lights.
We should send them a bill.
Well, it's something they've sidestepped and never really wanted to address. As we get more streetlights in areas like that, I mean, there's a monthly charge, and yeah, in Alberta, they have a system by where they determine through measuring the amount of traffic on a road and whatever, whether it needs a light. If it needs a light, then the owner of the highway is the one that gets tasked with putting the light out and paying for it. That just hasn't happened up here. It's a different system, and it's one where the costs have fallen onto the village. It was all a big surprise to the Department of Highways when I brought that up to them. Honestly, it's something they just didn't think about and probably didn't want to hear, but it's probably something I'll bring up again. And, while they're nice enough to give us this 50,000 every year to be used for more capital, like putting into more streetlights, and sometimes it's on their highway, we pay the operations bill going forward.
So how much does it cost to install like one streetlight?
How many did we do last year?
We did the 5 down 4 Mile, but those were poles as well, so there was that additional. I think that project was around 20,000 to do.
See, there's a good example. That road
Yeah.
belongs to the territorial government. They gave us the money to put the lights up. We pay the bill every month for those lights to be turned on.
We're done, what we'll receive that $50,000, and then we could just put that toward.
No,
So it's only for actual new projects and
yeah,
Each year.
Actually, what happened last year was what we got from NTCP, and the actual price ended up being quite a lot less. So we ended up having to actually give some of that money back. So this year we're planning to do a lot more than what we think we can. And so if the same thing happens again, we'll still use up all the money.
yeah. I mean, our primary concern is lighting for safety.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and that should be highways concern too. It's their citizens, they're public servants.
Yeah.
And they have traffic counters. It's not like they don't know how many vehicles are coming and going on that highway all the time.
Well, next time the highways minister is here, we'll have some questions for her. It's the infrastructure minister, which is Diane Archie. She's the deputy premier. So, yeah, that's a little tidbit of information there.
Well, I find the government kind of mimics a lot of Alberta's policies too. So the fact that Alberta has a policy in there for their highways, I don't.
Yeah, they have a lighting standards policy for Alberta government roads.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they have, just like us, they have a provincial road going right through a municipal town, and they have, a bit of an argument over whether the lights are needed or not. But that's why they need this policy, because they'll measure the traffic but it does go to the property owner, the one that owns the road. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions for finance manager? No? Okay, and then, you can just carry forward with that format. You see how in the next year, there's not that much planned, but and then you see the balances going forward, and there's always new money that can be applied for as well. So when we sit down and do our strategic planning, that sort of sets a framework where you might be thinking of projects that'll accomplish what you want to see the town look like, and then it starts to lead into, very specific projects that we could start to ask the administration to get an engineer to work on and give us planned dollars, and we'll start applying for funding. We always have to remember that even though we get 70% of the money usually from the other source, we still have to come up with 30. So at some point, and then you have to pay for the operational cost of maintaining it. And, the last consideration, that could mean raising taxes at some point. Something people are usually pretty loath to do, but that's in the background.
So is there a list of additional funds that you access over and above what you normally get?
You mean
Like,
extra
I know
funding
you
that we
mentioned
get?
last time, climate change. There's, 3.8 million available in climate change funds. And funds like that. Is
So
there-
I wouldn't say there's a definitive list, like there's different, there's federal and territorial departments that provide these funding programs and funding opportunities.
Mhm.
Usually when information about one of these programs comes along, I'll forward it to council. Sometimes here, staff will have suggestions or options. But if not, I would expect council to,
Mhm.
make their priorities known, any ideas or suggestions.
I think it's good too that the ideas come from the bottom up, like something that the community is wanting, and you don't worry about where the money's coming from. And then later on, you chase down where the funds could come from, because if you get distracted by the shiny new, funding source and say, well, gee, if we came up with something, we could get that money. It's not really fitting in with our maybe long-term goals. It's just a knee-jerk, wow, we can get some money to do something. Only thing I caution about
Yeah.
too many funding programs.
But if there's a list of all the, community plan projects you've got,
Yeah,
we have a
and
list of the
here's the
funding options we
matching
have.
funding sources, yeah.
We can join
So I would like to, maybe during a strategic planning session or whatnot, but, do more long-term planning, especially with like recreation facilities or ideas, proposals. And what we said is to think about what we want, what council wants, what we want to see for our community. And come up with do some planning so that we have these shovel-ready projects. So that when a funding program does come up, we have a plan for maybe a pump track, a bike track that we can put to this funding application and get it funded, Or, people there's been all kinds of suggestions that have come up, like track and field, outdoor soccer pitch. So what we need to decide is what are our priorities. We can spend a little bit of money, do some planning, so that these bigger projects are ready to go when funding programs come up.
And so that's the strategic meeting then, strategic planning meeting, that we gotta wait for that. But basically, you just want us to email you any kind of plans or anything that we want to see done, or what?
I think it would be good it could be done at a rec committee meeting maybe, if the focus is recreation. It could be done at strategic planning session. I think though, quite often I'll get, maybe an email from one councillor saying, like, this is a good idea. But, for me, it's hard to move a project forward just with one idea for one councillor. So it should be, like, don't get me wrong, I think it's important that councillors share these ideas and work as a team and brainstorm. But to be moving a project forward, it needs to be council as a whole.
I'm just looking at, like the basketball court idea project. Where would you put it?
So one of the ideas that we've been looking at is, there's been a few suggestions, but one idea that I personally like is along Antoine Drive, where the piles of dirt are on the
Yes.
back road,
Mhm.
is to just develop all along that road and put different kinds of outdoor sports facilities, outdoor facilities that don't require much O&M, and also things like a basketball court that can get flooded in springtime if it comes to that, but that will still be fine afterwards. So things like maybe a bike track, a basketball court, and things like that.
So I just, like, we have a basketball court in our rec center. Why don't we just have the rec center open during the summer?
I think it is. The rec center is open in the summer.
Or is it open in summer so
Oh,
kids
yeah.
can go there and all
Yeah.
that? Okay.
I think though, if you will, like basketball is quite popular here. It's more
Yeah.
popular than most sports. I think there is, from discussions with our recreation staff, an outdoor basketball court would be one at the top of the list, I think, for a lot of youth in the community. I think it's for a community our size not to have an outdoor basketball.
Yeah,
court,
I
it's fairly
honestly kind of think
unusual.
it'd be better on in Wild Rose for the kids up there, so when they can't come to town and stuff like
Yeah.
that, though. Because there's already one here in town, in the rec center that they could go use. Because I don't remember seeing any kind of schedule or anything like that for set schedule for the rec center in the summer. It's more of a winter thing when I see it,
Yeah,
or set nighttime.
I'm not sure off the top of my head now.
And that's a good idea, because more and more there are people living off the island. And so we don't have really any recreational development,
Yeah,
even,
But yeah, this isn't the proper place to talk about this. That's more.
that's the kind of discussion we will be having.
Yeah.
That's our,
Yeah.
when we come to our dream list.
Your
What
wish
we
list.
wish, our wish list, yeah.
Okay, well, let's conclude our discussion then about financial matters and move on to,
Can I just
okay,
make
sorry.
one more very quick point, Your Worship, if you don't mind?
Go ahead.
We'll be ready to pass a resolution to adopt the capital plan and our operational budget. Like I've said before, the capital plan is flexible. That can be changed. We'll do a number of revisions every so often throughout the year. O&M budget is fixed. We'll need to pass these before the end of this year. So I'd just like to make sure council consider any, if you're happy to move forward with these budgets right away, then we can get a resolution ready for maybe the next week or the week after there, or the first meeting in December. But if there's any changes that you'd like to see made, now is the time to make those changes. I know I know everyone's new, it's a new council, but it's budget time right now, so.
Okay, Councilor McPherson?
Yeah, just with, in regards to the capital plan, that's a revolving document, we can change throughout the year. We actually revisit that quite a bit throughout the year, so it's just the O&M budget that's gotta be set.
Yeah, and with MACA, you want to get that in so they can process the checks. That's,
Before the end of.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're expecting that, and
Oh,
then
I see,
that's
okay.
our funding, that's our cash in the bank.
So,
Okay. Moving along to committees and SAO Corrigan, you've been receiving a lot of, I guess, requests for the different councilors to be put on certain committees. Have you generated a list, or?
I've heard back from a few councillors, not everyone. I know councillors elect Wright and Browning. I'd suggested we hold off this discussion until they come back. I don't know that there's much discussion has to be had. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. But really, if you could just by email send me a list of your preference for committees, and it may just work out the perfect number for each committee. But otherwise, there'll be a little bit of back and forth. But hopefully by next meeting, we can have everyone allocated to the committees of their choice.
Yeah, that way we can have a resolution ready to appoint our committees. If we need to tweak it just at the meeting, we can, and we get our committees going.
Kevin, did you receive mine? I'm not
Yes,
sure. Oh,
I
okay.
did.
I wasn't sure if I sent it.
I got it. Thank you. Yeah.
I knew I wrote it, but I wasn't sure.
Say, maybe just go through.
he's got all the terms of reference,
As well, eh?
they're all attached with the agenda.
I can't remember. Finance and administration, which, as I said in the email, previously there had been a separate contracts committee. I don't think, we can go back to that by all means, but I think it would be fine to include that in finance and administration. So then there's a community development committee, public works, parks and recreation, and human resource.
So yeah, put in for 2, 3. And if you really had an interest, do 4. But you're gonna use up some of your lunch hours, and that's when we try to get the committee work done, usually. Although sometimes there might be other times, but yeah. Because we realize everyone's got, other things they're doing too, and we use the committees to help make a recommendation, which then the council can consider. You're expected maybe to do a little research, put together your reasons why you're making the recommendation. I think that would be the thing that tips the scale is you've already done the work, right? It's not enough that the committee just says, well, this is what we feel. You should say, well, we've reviewed and we on the basis of this, and this, that's why the recommendation is, and at least then it shows the work's been done. Okay, well, let's, we don't go in camera today. There's no in camera items. All right, then, we don't really have a counselor concerns or anything that, but, so we can go right to the adjournment, and, thank you everybody for coming out for this evening's meeting, and we'll meet again on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Darryl.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I didn't do my tax.